Sanshi.
Okay. Why is it the only thing you have hung up in here? It's creepy.
It's a reminder. Sanshi translate to hungry ghost or hungry parasite. In times of great calamity, the Sanshi can take control of a human host and poison them with... What's the word? Lòng tham không đáy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Frankenstein's podcast, where it's all about the monster. We're a creature feature podcast about monsters and why we love them. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Praska, and with me is...
your other host, Khalid Hussein.
What's going on, Khalid?
Not much, Joe. Just sitting in an empty parking lot outside of a train station.
Yeah, it's definitely a good setting for a podcast, I would say.
Yeah, I was like, let me get back to my roots, before I got all the bells and whistles of an indoor space.
Well, thank you for taking your time out of your precious day to join us, Khalid.
My pleasure, my pleasure. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty great. I'm having a just fine, comfortable, normal inside day.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Real stoked, though. We have a really exciting guest joining us today, and I'm going to bring him in right now. It's Shal Ngo, a writer, director, editor, and animator. His most recent film, Control Freak, which we'll be discussing today, is currently available to watch on Hulu. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. We have new guest questions for all of the new guests that join us, and I'm going to ask you those right away before we get into like your work and the movie and all that stuff. So the first question I have for you is, in all of pop culture, this could be like a book, movie, show, comic, game, or anything. What's your favorite monster or creature? And if it's not the same, what would you consider to be the scariest?
You know that I don't remember the name of it is, but there's this like you ever play that game The Evil Within?
I've heard of it, yeah.
There's like it's like a woman's name. It's like this like female creature that has like hair over her face and like 6 arms, and she's just coming after you in this game and like shrieking, like Julie or something. I can't remember. It's like some woman's name, but it's just like a really terrifying monster. I thought that
Laura.
Laura, there we go.
Ah.
Yeah, Laura's real scary.
That's a good one. I just looked up the image. That is terrifying. I like that. That's a good one.
She's like chasing you around, and yeah, and if she like, I like that game because it has like really good death animations. Like I've been playing the new Silent Hill, and like when you get killed in that game, I always play these games on hard. When you get killed in that game, you kind of just like, oh, you like fall down. But in Evil Within, like Laura gets you and she kind of plays, like she kind of like pounces on you, and then she just like smashes your head off and like tilts down. You can't tell if she's like drinking your blood or like doing something, but she's kind of like messing with your corpse, and it's just really terrifying. So I'll go with that scary monster. I feel like games have been doing really good in the monster department in the last 10 years.
It's a great point. I'd say games are a bit of a blind spot for us, at least on this podcast. We talk mostly about movies and shows, but it's something I want to get into more. So that was a good one.
I mean, I played Death Stranding, so I agree with you. The monster, the monster work on that is just mind blowing.
Yeah, super cool.
Second question for you is, what do you consider yourself to be most geeky about? Like, what's on your geek card?
What's on my geek card? I guess like I used to read a ton of sci-fi, so I have like a lot of sci-fi, a decent amount of like manga type stuff, and not really deep on that front. So I guess I'm gonna say sci-fi. Like I just know a lot about sci-fi.
Yeah, nice. I'm a sci-fi fan. Big Star Trek fan over here myself.
Nice.
That's my jam. But yeah, love sci-fi. So thank you for answering those questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Getting to like your work and stuff, I was looking into kind of some of the stuff you've done. So you've done commercials, documentaries, and of course like narrative films. I watched The Last Fisherman, which was really cool. And then I saw that you did the post-apocalyptic feature, The Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then even one of your documentaries, I didn't watch this one yet, but The Box sounds really fascinating, which is like solitary confinement in America.
Oh yeah, that's an intense one.
Yeah, it's all fascinating, but like the work that you're doing kind of spans like definitions in terms of like placing it like in a neat category, but like I think you kind of exist in like this experimental genre space.
Totally.
So I was kind of wondering just like what kind of drives you like as a filmmaker? What are you like super interested in exploring?
Well, I mean, I guess what drives me is that it usually starts with just like a concept or a theme or just sort of an image that I want to explore, and that tends to take like different directions, I guess. So I like what you said about the genre, because it's definitely like it's like a genre melding kind of thing, but usually it just starts with a concept or an image that I find really fascinating and want to explore to the best of my ability, and it kind of just goes in whatever direction is making sense. But that tends to have like I like to use stop motion or puppets or some visual effects. I like a little bit of dreaminess, but I like it to still be balanced with a level of reality. So kind of like a grittiness and a strangeness like coexisting in most of my work.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, Shal, I got a question for you. I'm very curious, especially after watching Control Freak, which, spoiler alert, I was a big fan of. What would you say are like your inspirations with regards to filmmakers and even just movies, especially in like the horror space?
Especially like specifically in the horror space.
Yeah, I think specifically a horror space. Like, what inspires you? What makes you like go like, oh, this I want to make something that makes me feel like this did.
Yeah. Goes way back. Like this is kind of a funny one, but like Carl Dreyer's like Vampire, and I don't know if you've seen that one. Like that one is pretty sick. It's from like I think it's from the 20s, but I remember just like a real vibiness to that, and seeing that back in the day, and kind of be my mind being blown that was sort of the foundation for all this horror stuff for like 100+ years now. So I found that one to be really cool. There's a couple sequences in that one that I thought were just like the fact that I don't think the whole movie, like it's very hard for a movie that old to hold up today, but there are parts of it that I thought were just fantastic. I wasn't like now now with a lot of my projects I'm going more towards horror because I just feel like that's where I can sell a movie. You know what I mean? Like in today's world, but like it's not necessarily wasn't always like my thing. I've just seen like a ton of movies across the board. The big ones that come to mind that I was always like, damn, I mean, like, wish I'd made that movie was like, I don't know, like Carpenter's The Thing. Like, that movie is just incredible. And the fact that was, I can't remember his name, but I think that was the prosthetics guy's, like his first movie. He was a protege of Savini, I think, or something. I don't remember the story, but I bet you guys know way more of it than I do. But the fact that was like his first film and that they had like so few resources, like that movie is close to a perfect movie to me. I always loved that movie. And then my second for the monster would have been like Brundlefly. Like I love The Fly. I love Cronenberg's shit. Like all of his movies, even like The Brood, which I rewatched recently, I think is really really cool. So these guys that are, and I think both of those dudes are kind of mixing genres and mixing flavors. Like Cronenberg is obviously like very like artsy, highbrow, well-being, kind of corny. Like he's got kind of like this corny aesthetic to him, but he's also like highbrow, which I really like. And then Carpenter is kind of just switching between horror and sci-fi and body horror so perfectly in The Thing. Halloween is also great, but I'm definitely drawn more to like some of those movies in like 80s, early 90s that were just really blowing my mind. Like I find that full CGI monsters are just not as scary. I don't know why. It's not even me being pretentious, but they just don't feel as scary to me on the screen. There's something about it, unless they like really nail it. I was watching like I was on a plane recently. I was watching It Part 2, and I just was just not like, it just didn't feel, none of it felt real at all for a lot of it. Like that scene with the old lady, I thought was so scary at first when she like goes across, like you see her like naked. I'm like, oh shit. And then this big like I don't know, just like the
Yeah.
boss came out, and it was kind of funny. Like all the tension just like evaporated in 1 second. It was just goofy. So I don't know what it is, but some of those older creatures that just feel more visceral and just are way more dope, I think.
100% agree, especially with regards to it too. It's like the most terrifying thing you've seen, and then it feels like something that was like scrapped in Spy Kids.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a kids movie or something. It's
Yeah.
so lame.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a scrappiness with that era of movie making too, the 80s and 90s. Like we talk a lot about those different movies on the podcast a lot. It's just like, like guys just throwing stuff together to see what works. And it's like, wow, that was like when you have almost unlimited resource, sometimes it's almost harder to get something that's really creative.
Yeah, totally.
So your other short film, HAPA, HAPA, exploring your identity and what it means to be biracial. I was going to say, you mentioned already, but the stop motion, and that was really fun. But I learned from that you are a fellow Minnesota person.
Oh yeah, Minneapolis.
I'm in St. Paul, and so you grew up in Minneapolis?
Oh yeah, yeah. I grew up in Minneapolis. Yeah, I went to the Arts High School in Golden Valley, like Purpose, if you know that one.
Purpose, yeah, Center for the Arts. Yeah.
Minneapolis rules.
Are you in Minneapolis too, Cleve?
Yes, sir. Not anymore, but I've lived there like basically all my childhood.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I moved to LA like 10 years ago now.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Yeah,
Yes,
Minnesota. Yeah, I actually didn't really have a question to follow. I just wanted to point out that connection was fun. Do want to transition to talking about the movie, but before I do that, Khalid, I actually have a question for you.
So sorry, Shal. So sorry. I was hoping we could get through an interview without this. What's up, Joe? What's your question?
How many ants are needed to fill an apartment?
How many ants are needed to fill an apartment?
Yeah.
As many as the lease allows. I don't know.
10 ants.
I'm the one in a car right now, and I want you to like drive off a cliff. Like that's how bad I am.
And that's a segue, Khalid. What are we talking about?
Thank you for asking, Joe. Today we are talking about the 2025 horror thriller Control Freak, directed by Shal Ngo. And I've got a synopsis from your homeboy Khalid that goes a little something like this.
Sure.
Motivational speaker and CEO Valerie Wynn has it all. A great job, a beautiful house, and a demonic curse her dad brought back from war. Join Val on her harrowing hair care journey as she quickly loses her mind and scalp to Sanshi. It's safe to say Val has her handful as she tries to overcome this head scratcher of a conundrum.
What a monster!
They're creatures of the abstract that live off potential energy.
It's alive!
Oh yeah, I love that. CEO. That's great.
Thank you. I've never gotten to actually do this for a director of the film, so thank you.
Dude, so good. So good.
That was good. So, yes, we both watched. We actually, I think we got a lot of friends to watch this movie too before in the past couple weeks. But honestly, yeah, as Khalid said, absolutely loved the movie. It was just a really cool, creative, horror flick that I think that more people should see. I had not known at first that this was based on the short from the bite-sized Halloween series. What you also made called Control, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So was your plan initially with watching or with making that, were you planning to make it into a feature, or were you approached to make it into a feature?
I was hoping.
Mm-hmm.
My manager, Trent, who's really great, turned me on to the bite-sized Halloween, and he was like, you should make a short because they turn, X number of these into features.
Oh.
So that was always my plan to make a feature, but I had no actual, I could have made something up in the moment, I'm sure, but I didn't really have the feature planned out yet. The short I was just like, I'll make the short first and then I'll figure out, how to turn it into a feature afterwards. Had a vague semblance of where I'd go with it, but so it started from the short. and I actually pitched them like 3 different ideas. My wife was instrumental in that. She was like, I can't remember exactly what it was. 2 of them were more kind of mainstream horror, and I told her about the Itch one. And I was like, I'm not sure about this one. It's so weird. And she was like, no, that's the best one. She definitely pitched that one. And so that's the one they ended up wanting me to do.
Yeah, that's so. It was interesting that in the short, it's all like the itching and the scratching and the kind of the loss of control is very central, but there's no like demon implication or monster implication in that one. That was an invention for the feature.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
kind of like I couldn't go as far with like the earlier drafts. Like Val was creating like video game engines, and there was a little bit of a creature, but it was sort of more about like losing control of your brain. I'd gotten really deep on, and not really that deep. I say it like that, but I've been doing research on just like the brain and how these different disorders can manifest, and I found that really fascinating. But it ended up just not being very cinematic. So ultimately, I was like, "Fuck it, let's have like a monster. Let's find another way in for me, and the way that I was able to expand on that concept in a way that felt true to me and scary and cool was through generational trauma and just looking at my own family. My grandfather was a monk and lieutenant colonel in the army. He wasn't a drug addict to my knowledge, but he was like a soldier who became a monk. Was in the war, and so kind of came from that, and then that's what ultimately kind of manifested into the form of the Sanshi now, which went through a ton of iterations that I'm sure we can talk about as we get more into it. But yeah.
That's awesome. I kind of love that progression. Like our podcast is all about creatures and monsters. So like, fuck it, let's find a monster is like almost what our podcast should be titled. Well said.
I don't know if it would be as helpful for the SEO, but
probably not the algorithm. I don't know. Real quick follow up to that though. So an amazing highlight of the movie too is like Kelly Marie Tran as the lead, just absolutely fantastic performance. And I'm so glad to see her like in things. I know that Star Wars didn't treat her very well, but like she was fantastic. And I feel like I'd love to see her like take on more like weird horror roles like this. But had you thought of her in mind when you were making the script, or was that kind of just like something exciting that came about?
She was one of the actresses I was thinking about, but after I saw her audition tape, it was just sort of like, this has to be it, which is a little difficult because the character of Val was actually a bit older initially. And the problem with a lot of us Asians is that we look like 10 years younger than we are. So, I was thinking more like, like Lucy Liu age woman, because then they'll look, I wanted Val to be like 40 in the first draft. So, cast someone who's 50, so they look 40. And Kelly is very youthful, she looks very young. So, but after seeing her audition, I kind of just changed the script around and rethought of it in my head, because I think her performance is so good. And that was just like, from the first tape, it was like, oh my God, so brilliant. Like the fact that she's able to do like what I found tricky in casting it was someone who could do like the very vulnerable stuff and like the speaking on stage. And I think the combo of her just being like a really accomplished actress and having all that background in like musicals, musical theater, and like kind of that like showboating, energy that they have on stage. I don't know if showboating is the right word, but just sort of like performing, she was really good on both of those fronts. So it's like a no-brainer to cast her.
Yeah, she was amazing. I think, like you said, like the splitting of the motivational speaking and like those like kind of delicate moments was really cool, even from a directing standpoint. And also, she just pulled off the physical stuff, which we'll get into towards the end.
Yeah,
really convincingly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because like we're all roughly Val's age, but there is something affecting about having kind of a younger, like workaholic, like type A person. I don't know. It just resonated with me in a way that it might not have if it was a traditionally older character.
Yeah, totally. It kind of it was less. It was more like she was still hungry for something that she hadn't quite gotten to, as opposed to like the way the character was before, where she was like really big back in the day, and now she's trying to like recapture that. Kind of shifted it a little bit. But
exactly. It's almost like it felt like those bank robber narratives of like one last job and then I can stop being like this kind of a thing, as opposed to kind of like a regrettable position.
Yeah, totally.
So pivoting to another aspect of the film that really stood out to me, the sound design. Speaking personally, I was physically ill after the scene when she finally gets to go through her skull to her brain and
Yeah.
basically like loses motor functions and everything to it. Um,
Yeah.
and that is in no small part to the just fantastic sound design. So I guess my question overall is like, at what point did the sound design come into play for you when you were creating this story, especially when it translated to the feature, and how did you execute it? How did it come about to like what we ended up seeing on screen?
Yeah, I mean, sound is always just like a huge component of it. I remember my teacher, a sound teacher back in the day in college, said like the sound is like 50% of the movie, which I don't actually agree with, but I think it's like 40.
It sounds right.
Pretty important. But yeah, that was always part of it, just like the itching sound and the short. I mean, with the feature, I wanted to like get the right itch sound, obviously, and even just when I was working on through the edit with my editor, I was really trying to get like the right kind of itches, and knew that we would need like super great sound design to just get like the immediacy of it, and like the kind of how close it's going to be, because I knew there's going to be like in the short too, like you have kind of like a roadmap of how you want to shoot it, which is a lot of these like macro close-ups. Honestly, like I wanted even more macros than the end film that we had, but it was just our shooting schedule was so tight that a lot of them, a lot of the macros we just didn't have the time. Sometimes it'd have to be second unit, and we didn't have the time to like really dig in, pun not intended, to get those sounds right. But yeah, we went through sound department. Our sound designer Zach was just phenomenal, really getting like the right sounds for that. And I remember the one thing when we were doing the final mix that I would always do, like every scene, it was kind of just the same note: turn up the itching, like turn up the itching, like turn up more, just go too far. So I just wanted it to be kind of a horrendous experience watching it.
Me and my roommate were like about 30
Jesus.
minutes in, just itching our heads
Yeah.
unconsciously. It was very effective.
Yeah, thanks. That's kind of where I think people, like, just based on the critical response online, that's kind of where I lose a lot of people, which is funny. Which is like, I guess this is how it goes sometimes. But I wanted it to be like insufferable, just like you're in your head and you're just like, you can't stop itching it. Because I started itching a lot there, and also when you're like itching close to your ears, it's like way louder. When you're itching your head, like you kind of feel it in your head also, like you hear it almost on the inside of your head in like a
I mean,
fucked up way, I think.
I think that like of the like compulsions that you can like show too, itching is just like such a fascinating one, because it's like you're basically like just microdosing self-harm,
Yeah. Good way to put it.
And
Yeah,
it's
totally.
it's just like this movie really milks that for like the body horror that can entail.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So the themes that you kind of were trying to explore, there's like isolation, anxiety. You mentioned the generational trauma, but one I thought that was also kind of interesting was just kind of like the identity themes. I think like with the conflict with like the birth certificate in the beginning was kind of interesting, and how it informed that. I'm going to ask you a question that is going to sound incredibly nerdy and in the weeds, but I'm asking anyway because a friend of a podcast who does our art, his name is Jimmy, watched this movie with us, and he's in Thailand right now, so he had to deal a lot with birth certificates too. But he said he pointed out that the birth certificate says Indiana but has a Minnesota border, and I don't know why anyone would notice that except for maybe him. And so he was wondering, does that have anything to do with actual the sort of fractured identity theme, and it's from two different things?
Oh, dude, I wish. I'm not that good of a director, man. I love that someone. That makes me so happy that someone thought I would do that, though.
Yeah, you can claim it now.
I'm gonna claim it now. I swear to God, just wait. If I get another interview, I'm gonna be like, well, if you notice in the birth certificate, dual identity, which I explored in my film Hoppa, this idea of two identities.
Yes.
As a director, I really take care of every detail on set. Like, everything is like, other people work on the movie, but it's really me. It's not. It's like me.
Definitely not the props department.
I love it. This is a
Don't
start to
sub
a
that clip out,
fascinating arc.
anyone.
Okay. I was debating keeping that question, but I was like, I got to ask it.
No, it made me super happy that people are paying attention. That was definitely just a mistake. I didn't even know that. I had no idea it was the Minnesota Seal. Now I have to rewatch it. I literally like after this is over, I have to go to that scene because there's a close up shot of it. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, he sent me like a screenshot, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I would not even thought of that.
He pulls it up. Yeah, it's the Minnesota Seal. Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I even said Indiana. Like, there's so many details that sort of like that people have to come up with on set. So I guess like props and art department were like Indiana, or maybe I said Indiana. I think I would have said Minnesota. I wrote her as being from Minnesota. Like, I wrote a big backstory of her, and she was from Minnesota originally.
Oh, interesting.
Not that just not that ever goes. That has anything to do with the movie.
That changes
really.
everything.
The whole context. Yeah, I read it differently now. So when I was watching this though, I was watching with my wife Nicole, who's a guest on the podcast a lot, and she kind of talked about how she said she saw herself a little bit in the character, like this kind of high achieving, sometimes struggling to ask for help, take a break. But she was saying that she felt it reflected sort of this like kind of plus with the body horror reflected this like sort of female existence in a sense. And her question that she wanted me to ask is, do you think the story would work if the main character was a man?
I think it would work, but it would just be kind of different.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know why, but just from the start, she was always a female character to me, and she was always an Asian character to me because I thought that was just that like that toughness and that repression, but also that softness and that feminine side. I thought was just very endemic of who Val was, and I do think it would be a pretty different movie if it was a man. I don't know quite exactly how. But part of it to me too is playing with different tropes and that she has kind of like a younger husband and she's this like boss girl, she just has that like CEO energy, and is repressed sort of the deeper side of her emotion, and in a lot of ways maybe her feminine side to some degree. I mean, she's terrified of having a child and she's trying to like always dominate all the time and has this very kind of alpha energy to her. But yeah. I like to think that like I have had some like Asian women talk to me that it's maybe hits a little bit different from there, because that's definitely the space I was going from. Obviously wanted to be a universal character, but I was trying to keep her very specific in that way and draw on just like the different people in my life, a lot of Vietnamese people in my life that have kind of like either that like tiger mom energy or that like succeed at all costs sort of like immigrant mentality. So I think just the fact that she's a woman, that she's an Asian immigrant is very important to her character.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What are your feelings on motivational speakers? I'm very curious because it's when I've seen it in movies before, it's usually kind of like that character is like considered like the blowhard. It's like the nerve of this person to sit in a room full of people and tell them to like just get over their obstacles and stuff. Whereas I feel like you really utilize that to kind of like challenge her. It's like, all right, are you motivational? Can you motivate yourself? Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because people bring their own preconceptions into it watching it, because some people are just like, oh yeah, if motivational speakers are so stupid, you're right. And other ones are like, oh, they're people too. And for me personally, it was good for me to come at it because I have been like sucked into different stuff like that. Like I sometimes get into motivational speakers. I've got, I did like the Landmark Forum back in the day, and I got into like transcendental meditation for a while. And usually I fall out of it when I feel like it becomes too cult-like, and then I'm not into it anymore. But I see the appeal, so I was trying to put it somewhere in the middle. There's definitely parts where we're straight up making fun of Val, like with the ad and stuff. Like it is supposed to be a little bit ridiculous, but I was, in developing her, I like to think that there was, like, if you read one of her books, there would be wisdom in it. You'd probably go into it thinking it was super corny, but there's a couple little nuggets that you take from here and there that are pretty good. And then obviously the flip side being that, like, I know people like this. I have friends that dabble in this space, and like they have their own problems, and nobody's perfect, and everyone struggling with this thing. So it's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome. I think these people feel on stage when they're like that, you know, like they probably think like, who am I to tell people any of this shit? But yeah, I was keeping it sort of in the middle there. I was playing with going in either direction, but I think a parody of it would have been too much. Like you said, like I feel like almost always you see a motivational speaker on stage, it's a parody, and this one wasn't really supposed to be a parody. Obviously, it's like it's sort of obviously wrong, kind of tragic. I don't know if Val can keep doing what she was doing after the movie ends. Like maybe she does a different kind of therapy. But you know, but there's people out there that are really good. I think that are doing that kind of work that is important. So yeah, I'm not a hater.
I think it's really hard to do good characterization if you're a hater of the characters. So
Yeah.
I think your instincts are right in this. It was a very sympathetic portrayal of the profession.
Yeah.
Okay, so following up, there's an interview where you and your cinematographer Scott Siracusano, who, fun fact, I actually worked with a few times when I first moved out to LA. He's a great worker. It was awesome working with him. I'm excited for the journey he's been on since.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in the interview, you guys mentioned that you were very intentional with the visual language, and so and he also stated that there was a different type of like camera or filming when Val was not in control. So we were just hoping you could elaborate on that a little here.
When was that interview from?
The interview is from Cook Optics.
Oh, that was just with Scott, right? That wasn't with me.
I think that was
Right,
just
right.
Scott,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah, it's just
Okay,
Scott.
I was
Sorry.
like, I just completely forget I did that.
Does that make sense? I guess I don't know if you've ever seen the interview in question, but he says
Yeah,
that.
I listened to it. Yeah,
Okay.
I remember that one now. Yeah. So just sort of like the visual language I worked on with Scott. You're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Scott's the best. Love Scott. And we were almost kind of playing with it already in the short. You know, it's a mix of these like extreme close-ups with wider shots and kind of leaning more into color a little bit more, especially in our house, you know, like getting things a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler in different spaces, not having like a very desaturated look. Having kind of like a warmth to everything, but like an eerie quality, which was really important for us. I think most of it we shot on like the 25. But the nice thing about Scott is he's always like, he really wanted to like push the visual language further and further, which I was super, you know, kind of, I'm a little bit more reserved sometimes in terms of like doing the really wacky stuff, but I think it really fit with this one, especially because it was horror. So some stuff we were shooting on the 12mm lens. Usually when she's out of control, we'll move into a more handheld look. Like we're switching between the two a lot. And one thing I've noticed making more and more movies is that like you can have a little bit more. This is maybe just my little nugget of wisdom. Like it's really great to have rules and whatnot when you're filming something, but sometimes if you just have a shot be handheld, it's not going to be the end of the world, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So in general, we kind of stuck to those principles. The whole second part of the movie is handheld, I believe, almost all of it. Underwater stuff has a lot more control of the visuals, and it's sort of just like the ideas that the whole movie kind of falls apart in time with Val. So once she's itched the hole in her head, and we're in her perspective, pretty much everything from that point on is going to be handheld, except for a couple moments when we do, you know, like the chopping scene. That's like that slow.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, that didn't work handheld. That's kind of her like. I guess that's a good example because that's kind of her like trying to get control back. So we were playing a lot, like wondering like how much control does Val have in this scene, and you'll see, you know, if you watch it again, maybe you'll notice that like when she's very frantic, it tends to be much more handheld, and we're playing more in that space. And then when she's more rigid, like all the stage stuff is on dolly or sticks. One really fun thing that Scott did, which is like a crazy idea of his, was when she, which is a scene that I really love, is when she's on stage the second time and she's like freaking out. And you never see the Sanshi. That was a scene that I kind of had to sell to everybody else because they're like, don't we want to? And even for 1 second, I was thinking it would appear in the mirror, but I think someone convinced me not to. But there was a lot of talk of like, don't you want to show a little bit of the creature? And I was kind of like, no, I think it's cool if it's just completely in her head for this entire scene. I think Kelly can pull it off, but there's definitely talk of like getting the Sanchi in 1 or 2 shots there. I'm really glad that we just stuck to it being completely in her head. But when it first kind of touches her, Scott had this idea to like rip the camera off the dolly as the Sanchi first touches her. So it's like it starts as this like dolly in shot, and then Scott literally just like pulls the camera off the thing. And it's actually kind of subtle. Like there's a big shake, but it's like this slow move and then a switch, and that's sort of like the moment of no returns in terms of like when we're going almost like full handheld. And it was that one shot that Scott just had the idea for in the moment, which I thought was super cool. And he pulled off on like I think that might be our first take. We also didn't get a bunch of takes in this film because the shoot was so tight. So everything has to be planned to the T, and there's really like that was one of those rare moments when we could just experiment because we thought we could get it right away. But this is a very planned out, very orchestrated, like minimal take movie, which was really tricky sometimes. But I'm glad we're able to like get that moment where it kind of like shifts over.
You guys packed a lot into this movie too. It's like
Yeah,
I kept being shocked that it was like an hour and a half with how much went on in it.
yeah. And kind of like it has almost like a fourth act because it just which is another
Yeah.
which I think is cool. Or some people were like, "This movie's still going," but I kind of wanted to just be like, "What?" It's like I kind of love that in movies when I'm into it and I'm like, "It's still going." Like when that's a good thing. When it's not like, "Fuck, it's still going." You're not like, this is the bad version of it. But when like a movie like just is like can continue a momentum, if it can like up itself enough, that's what I'm always going for with the endings now, or at least not always, but like with the projects I'm thinking about now is like how can you like keep ramping it up, which I think a lot of newer movies they make that harder to do because they like blow their wad so early. Like I feel like a lot of movies have this like awesome first act, and then by the end I'm like whatever, like you did your coolest shit with the first 15 minutes, and now I just like don't care as much.
And then you leave the theater with kind of like that like winded feeling, like it was kind of more
Yeah,
exhausting than anything else.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good exception is Weapons. I don't know if you guys have seen Weapons yet. I bet you have.
Yeah, we
We
actually
saw
both just
it
saw it. Yeah,
on Saturday. Yeah,
I
so
don't know how
good.
you guys felt. That ending was fucking awesome.
so cool.
That
So
we
into
left
it.
we
That one
left
stuck
just
it.
buzzing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you got to do it. Just like
Yeah.
explode in the last 5 minutes. Like make sure your last 5 are just like fire.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's like
Totally colors your opinion of the movie. I will say I did love like kind of as like the inverse of not showing Sanshi in that scene. I don't know that it's necessarily an inverse, but it felt like a mirror to it is when she's doing the photo shoot and you suddenly are like in a void with Sanshi and you see her reacting to it. One thing I'd clocked that I don't know that I'd seen before really was typically in those scenes, eventually you cut back to the reaction of everybody that isn't there or that isn't in the void with her. And you just cut from that to like after that event. And it's almost kind of like, did that happen? Did any of that happen? And then eventually, like, you get the people's reaction through dialogue when she's like eavesdropping on her boyfriend and her assistant. And I just
yeah.
thought that was like a really well done inverse.
Thanks. That was not how it was written or how it was shot. So that's sort of an editing process thing. Originally, she screamed. It cuts to a wide. Robbie goes to comfort her, and then there's like another scene where she's telling everyone that she's fine. And it was just an unnecessary beat. So we ended up cutting it out for that exact reason, just being like, why don't we just keep it going? And it just feels better that she is alone in this struggle, or we feel like she's alone in it. She's more isolated than just like people asking her for help. So yeah, I agree. I think that's a much better version. That's not how I wrote it or how I shot it. And but sometimes you just figure out in the editing process that you're hitting the same thing over and over again, and you just need to streamline a little bit. And this is just more interesting. If you can do something more interesting in less time, it's just a huge win on all fronts, on budget, on hours on set.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get better at that exact thing that you're talking about, like that better. The more I do this, like you flex that muscle more, where you really can have a good idea of what the final product is going to be and what you don't need. Like the way Soderbergh shoots stuff, like it's insane. When he's shooting the Nick and stuff, he would just like, he's camera operating. He's like, oh, I don't even need master shot for this. We don't even need to shoot the end of this. I'm already going to cut. He's already like he's already like kind of seen the movie in his head, and once he sees what's there, then he keeps going. Like if you can get efficient about that, that's something that I didn't really realize until I got more experience in film, that like efficiency is maybe the most important of all your skills in a way. Efficiency in writing, efficiency in communicating to your actors and your crew, efficiency in shooting. And it's tricky because if you don't have it later, then you are completely fucked. If you don't have this component, then there's no going back, unless you're a big studio that can do like huge reshoots. We're not going to do reshoots on Control Freak after the fact. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
it's like this balancing act all the time. But that's like a perfect example of something that you could just, I could have just been like, oh, you don't need this. Just cut a whole shooting scene. Just go back to that. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I thought that was interesting.
No, it's very well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking clearly what you're saying, like the kind of like, did this actually happen? I feel like there's an element of, for a while in the movie at least, there's an element of like Val is kind of an unreliable narrator to us as the audience. Like we're not sure, like, is this happening? Is it not happening? It did feel like there was some confirmation. We're in spoiler territory, very clear for anyone listening who hasn't watched this, who should be watching it. But at the very end, when she kind of does defeat it, which, as you mentioned, that last the last sequence is like just the sheer force of will, like clutching back that control, like is so it's really part of it that really made this movie like stand out for me in a lot of ways, that like last sequences. But when she kind of defeats it underwater and there's the baby, like we see it. But then there's the coda where she asks Robbie to stay with her. And I feel like there was some intentional ambiguity, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, with like when we do see her with the baby, that Robbie isn't necessarily in that. Like, I guess we're not sure, like, did he say yes? Did he stay with her? Like in my mind, I kind of want that he stayed because I feel like she needs a win in the family department. But
yeah,
was that intentional to like leave some of that ambiguous?
Yeah, it was definitely intentional to leave it ambiguous. We shot another version where Robbie is in the picture at the end. But for me, and just for the team and talking to people, and my ultimate gut feeling on it was that I didn't think he was gonna stick around for that, and I don't think she really earned him. Like she'd burned him pretty bad.
I think there's some fairness with the fact that she tied him up. Yeah,
yeah, for like days, and
yeah,
kind of shitty beforehand. Like I just didn't feel like it was so realistic that he would stick around. So I ended up cutting him. I wanted him to stay too, honestly. Like I would have actually preferred if they ended up together, but I think just after watching it and just the story that they had, it didn't feel sincere. So at least she, I think there's like a medium win. Like I wanted it not to be like a full bummer ending, which was kind of what was being pushed in a way. Like there definitely was a feeling that they wanted this movie to have a bummer ending, and I was really pushing against that personally, because I just don't love, I feel like if you're dealing with these like heavy themes, I don't love if your end hypothesis is kind of like, I don't know, like Smile or something, where I feel like the meaning of the movie is that you can never beat your trauma and your trauma will destroy you, which I feel like it's kind of like that's the message of a mental health movie, to me at least. Like I watched that movie and I was like, oh damn, I guess whatever's wrong with me is going to kill me and there's nothing I can do. So that was kind of, I don't know, kind of cop out. So
I'll be honest, you make a very strong case for Val to give up throughout all of this.
Yeah.
And like it just makes that ending so much more like uplifting, because like by the time she's in the wood shop, like doing like cutting her hand off, like I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like what are you salvaging? And you make the point. It's like, no, there's always something to salvage.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was great. I really loved that. I was going to point out, small little fun thing. I liked that you had Robbie when he was tied up watching that Mr. Crockett show, which was also a Hulu thing. That was a fun little reference.
Yeah.
So do you want to move on to the creature part, the big monster stuff? Shall we, Monster Khalid?
Let's monster.
So the Sanshi. I was trying to do like some research into like, what maybe was, I guess I could ask you perfectly, but there was an article that I found that was called Control Freak Sanshi Monster Explained. And it went into like multiple paragraphs of like what it's supposed to be. So I was kind of wondering what was it for you? Like, what is it? What myths is it drawing from? And How much did you add your own flavor into it?
Now I got to read this article. Sorry, like look that up. But it's very exciting for me to, people
are
like,
theorizing.
Give a shit enough about something I made to like make theories. It's very cool. It's originally from like the three different names for it, like the three corpses, this Chinese thing, and it's like these different parasites. So it started from that, or the three worms, and that's where I can't remember how I even came upon it, but I was kind of just looking into like hunger and desire and self-destruction, and I happened upon that. And I thought that was really cool. And then I found these different creatures in like Japanese, and I think there was even like a Filipino version of one, Japanese, Chinese mainly. These like demons that curse you with this hunger, where like you eat and eat, but you're never full, or when you start to eat, it just like turns to ash in your hands. And just this idea of like trying to be satiated, but like never being satiated was sort of the genesis of it. It's sort of like an addict who, or like, yeah, it's sort of like a drug addict, or like just like an itch sometimes, like no matter how much you scratch it, like you never feel like you've done it. And that's just, to me, like the root of a lot of addiction and despair in people. It's like a void that you try to fill, but it's just falling into the void. Some people do it with food, some people do it with alcohol, sex, or whatever else, but it just becomes a totally unenjoyable experience. And that was sort of where these different like hungers, like this hunger spirit came from. And then, yeah, so I just kind of took that name and transferred it to Vietnam. I thought that would be cool with the Vietnam War and stuff, with some sort of like being that comes that's passed down from person to person. Also just thinking, sort of just combining like addiction with the trauma, like that book, The Body Keeps the Score, I think is really interesting. That talks about trauma, how it's manifested in your body. And yeah, those are just sort of like the different aspects of it. I originally saw the Sanshi as almost like a puppeteer, couldn't like kind of like moving her almost like she was a stop motion puppet herself, with all these different arms kind of like guiding her around. We were able to do that a little bit with the film, not as literally. Like I even wanted it to be like growing out of her body. That was something we were concepting, but just also couldn't quite figure out. Like if it's literally like, that's why it's kind of behind her a lot of the time. But if we could do something with VFX at the bottom part of its body, like it doesn't really have any legs. It's just kind of like coming up from the back of her spine and then coming around her. So it's sort of this like puppeteer, like it's a part of her body. It's a parasite. It's connected to her.
That's cool.
But yeah, a lot of this stuff gets lost in the practicality and the budget aspect of it. So you're kind of just trying to make it as cool and scary as possible, and with like a really cool silhouette, as I'm sure you know. Like I feel like that's the beginning of the monster. You get like a cool silhouette. And that's what we worked on a lot, just like getting the face right, getting just like the overall shape of it right, but also having it be sort of amorphous, like being able to shift around. I even played early on. I was talking to a friend of mine who does a lot of great stuff in Paul Trillo, who does a lot of great stuff in AI, and I wanted it to be like the first AI monster. That was the first version where it would just like constantly be like switching shapes and morphing, but that ultimately didn't pan out. I think, because that would have given it obviously like a very otherworldly feel, and maybe you have like a puppet version for when it touches her, but just have this thing that's just like constantly shifting. But I'm glad that we ended up with like the more practical approach. And
yeah, it's really cool. And I, right when you were saying that the puppeteer element, I was kind of remembering those scenes at the end where it feels like it's kind of guiding her hands, and that was a pretty cool element. I got a question from one of our other regular collaborators and friends, Joel Brewster, who put us he recommended this movie to me initially. But he was wondering, he's a big bug fan, but he was like, he asked if were ants always intended to be the focus of it? Or like it's kind of a untapped market in terms of bug horror. We see a lot of spider stuff, but were you planning with ants to start with?
Yeah, I mean, the ants were in the short too. I just thought ants were gross and scary. A lot of the good ideas come from my wife, so I can't remember if she told me to put ants on the monster or not, or if I had already come up with it. I really don't know. But once it was written and we were talking about monster, it was always going to be covered in ants. We were trying to figure out how to do that. We worked with Hyphenate, this amazing visual effects company in LA, and Travis Button was the the head of that, and Travis is just an incredible artisan and such a hard worker, and they added all the ants in post on the Sanshi. So, all that 3D mapping, I think they did such a fantastic job. And when the ant is like in that dream sequence, there's only 1 or 2 shots of a real ant. We tried to do it with real ants when it's in Val. Yeah, the ants are very hard to direct. So we
Can you imagine?
yeah. It wouldn't go in Kelly's nose. We kept trying to get it go up her nose. I'm just kidding. We didn't. That was all effects. But the ones on like the hand and stuff, we were trying to do it with real ants. I think there may be still 1 shot of a real ant in there.
Wow.
But
yeah. However, they did the effects on when it was on the creature itself that was like really like dynamic and interesting and cool.
Yeah. They did such a good job on that. Yeah, definitely.
So you worked with Todd Masters' company, Masters FX, for the creature work. There's some really amazing behind-the-scenes images that on Todd Masters' website, and about like the maquettes, the sculpts. Can you speak to what that process was like in terms of like how much input you might have had, like what they had given you initially to what ended up on screen?
Yeah, sure. In terms of like the developing of it beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the most fun parts. Like we were just having a lot of calls with them, and Tippett Studios were also involved in the pre-renders and the imaginings of it, and they created like a digital version of the Sanshi that then Travis was able to use and edit and add on his own. But yeah, we talked a lot about creature design. I was sending them lots of everything from like random sketches to images that I'd pulled, and kind of just like showing them the idea of what I wanted it to be. And then they would come back to me with different ideas. And it got kind of like more and more outlandish, which was cool. Like Todd's sketches tended to be early on, like way more grotesque and strange, which is kind of like how that mandible that it has came out of it. But I always wanted to be, have kind of like a feminine energy to it, like this weird kind of psychosexual thing. Cause there's like, obviously like she literally penetrates her own head. There's something kind of like sexually violating about it. And there's also something kind of like maternal, how it's like whispering in her ear and kind of like caressing her. So I wanted that. I always saw it as kind of like thinner and frailer and like a little bit lopsided, like not like perfect. So the actual Sanshi has kind of like a weird, like hunched back, and one arm is way bigger than the other arms. But just to give it this shape where you couldn't quite ever tell exactly what it was, until you kind of see it at the end. So that was a really cool process. And then once they actually started building it, obviously, it was off to the races. But yeah, we ended up with some really cool concept art for the Sanshi, and then figuring out how much we can actually make it move. Todd had the jaw that's on the jaw that's remote control, so you can get a lot of control out of the head. Then the puppeteers are there's like 2 puppeteers for 2 arms in the back, and a third puppeteer handling the giant arm. But there's not that much control in the giant hand, so you can't show it for that long on screen. That's why like the tricky part with a puppet with that much complexity is that you can't show it super long unless you get close, which is great that the head had so much character to it, because you can kind of get these close-ups where it's like right on Val, like it really does feel alive. But yeah, so there was a lot of other, it's a huge pain in the ass to shoot that kind of stuff, but it is really fun. And Stanley White played the Sanshi, and when we were casting that was one of Todd's guys. When we were first like casting that, Todd was like, yo, you should probably use my guy, because you need someone who is used to doing this shit, because he's carrying this massive suit, and like if he wants to pee, it's going to be like a 30 minutes. You know what I mean? You just have to, it's torture to be in this shit. Like Stanley would just be sitting on an apple box in between takes, just like basically meditating. Like he was the man. He was great. But it's like a huge physical undertaking to play these monsters, because once you're all in there, like you're in there, like you're not going to get out of that outfit, and it's super heavy. So yeah, so just kind of you start out like in the ideation phase, just going crazy, and then the reality of like how many shots are we going to have the monster in, how much can we actually make it move? We were never really going to show its legs, which made it a little bit easier. But how do you get like the full range of motion with like sometimes there's 4 limbs on screen at the same time, and how do you make sure everything's still kind of moving and nothing's just kind of like hanging out there?
Fascinating.
That's amazing. I think so it sounds like you had a guy in a suit, but there was also puppetry going on. Was it, when it was practical, was it always the suit, or was there other times where it was kind of just one of just the puppet?
It's pretty much always the suit. I don't think there's shots because I didn't even mention that. This is probably the most important part. Stanley's controlling the head with one arm, and then his arm is like this. So he's controlling the head. And there's like one head that's fully movable, and then there's another head that's just like for like the stunts and stuff that can't move when he's like falling down and stuff, because you don't want to ruin those parts of it. So this is like the other head. And then Todd has the other head, I believe, the one that has like the full motion control. But yeah, he's literally it's just like on his hand like this, and there's a strap in here, so he can get like the articulation and the movement right in the head. So he got really good at having it kind of like creep around her shoulder and stuff. And yeah, he was
That's so cool. For any listeners, Shal just like brought over the monster head. Which was amazing. I was like, what? When you were coming back, I was like, is that the head? That's the head? Oh.
For 2 seconds, I thought it was like a cat. I thought you were just gonna like demonstrate on a cat.
Dude, it's on my shelf, and my son, who's 2, will like feed it peanuts sometimes. So literally, like he likes Sanshi. He'll just like, he's not scared of it at all.
I love that.
Peanuts in his mouth. It's so funny.
It's amazing.
Isn't that like David Lynch's daughter on the, what was it? One of the
Eraserhead? Yeah, how she just hung out on a Eraserhead set and became friends with the little like weird baby puppet.
Yeah.
That thing is horrifying. That's a good best creature too. That baby's so scary.
It was a good one. Yeah, we did that one on the podcast a little bit ago. Actually, that was a fun one.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, this was super interesting. I don't want to take too much more of your time, Shal, but we have just like a final segment that we do on the show that we call our What the Fandom segment. And we just share 1 or 2 things that we're kind of like into in the moment that doesn't have to have anything to do with what we just talked about or even monsters, just kind of something like, oh, reading this, watching this, listening to this, and just to recommend to the audience. So we usually let our guests go last. But so I'll start with Khalid. What the fandom with you this week?
Thanks for asking, Joe. I'm just going to go ahead and do a banner What the Fandom for all 3 of us for weapons. I'm sure the word of mouth is spreading like wildfire, but if it needs just a little bit more fuel, go see that shit. So good. I don't even want to spoil it, but if you like Barbarian, you're going to love this. Just a good time. Go check it out. So my actual What the Fandom for this week is going to be the 2024 film Strange Darling. It was directed by J.T. Molnar, and it's currently available on Prime Video, if you have that. But yeah, I just threw it on with my roommates, just kind of checking out something new to watch, and it's such a like just compelling movie all the way through. It's got like a disjointed storytelling structure where it's like they're in chapters, but like the scenes are in chapters, but like you start with chapter 3 and then you jump to like chapter 2, and it's like it feels like there's no rhyme or reason to it, except that pretty early on you understand that they're kind of playing with like gender politics and like our assumptions based on gender, and it just gets more and more fascinating as like each chapter kind of like reveals a bit more what you've been watching. And it just, when you talk about sticking the landing, to me it's such a beautiful ending. I don't even want to spoil it, but just a really thoughtfully directed story, a very fun way to execute it, and it's just been on my mind since I saw it. So go do yourself a favor, check out Strange Darling if you haven't. And Joe, what the fandom with you?
Thanks for asking, Khalid. Mine is last night I just watched this movie. If it's from 2022, I watched Talk to Me from the Filippo brothers in Australia. They have a new movie out, Bring Her Back, that just came out, and I was intrigued by that, and I thought I'd finally give Talk to Me a chance. I heard all the hype, but I hadn't gotten to it. But it was definitely really good, and it's like, for those of you who don't know, it's like kind of like a Ouija board, but instead it's like a ghost hand that you like shake and let your ghosts in. Very silly idea that I feel like in lesser hands would have just kind of come off as like a campy B movie almost, and just like goofy. but they like find a way to make it like they take the subject matter so seriously, and the themes are taken very seriously, and the acting, the leads in it are just, they're put through the ringer, and it was just it was continually engaging, and like there's no like real like big jump scares. Instead they kind of like do these like lingering horror shots and stuff that just like it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to wait to go to sleep for a little bit after this one. But it was really well done. I was really happy with it. I'm glad I gave it a look. Very spooky if you're into a spooky movie. So check out Talk to Me. It's on Netflix now, so that's where I was able to find it. But I would recommend it. Yeah. How about you, Shal? What the fandom with you?
Both those movies are rad. I get to test both of them. I have like a very like out of left field one, but it affected me a lot. It's by, what is his name? Lee Chang-dong, I think. Guy who did Burning. If you saw that movie Burning, which is like one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
He did this movie called Secret Sunshine. That's about like this mother and this kid, and sort of about Korean Christianity and churches in this small town. It's just it's one of the most devastating movies I've ever seen. It's like truly just puts you through the ringer. It's just a drama. But it's, it's like 2.5 hours long, but it's not like overtly gory or extreme. It's kind of got that sort of same style as Burning, where it's kind of at a distance. It's very slow. There's not a ton of artifice, but I found myself just completely devastated by it. So if you feel like you want to see a movie that's going to put you through the emotional ringer in a way that you're not used to, I definitely recommend Secret Sunshine. It's something special.
Wow. Good recommendation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is like, whenever we get a chance to talk to a creative, it's like truly like a special thing. So we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to coming out. So
yeah. And to anyone listening, like definitely go check out Control Freak on Hulu. It's a really good movie, and I hope more people see it. I know it came out a little bit ago, but I hope like maybe after this, hopefully if you'll get some spikes or something. Given our influence, I don't know. But is there any like anything you want to plug really quick? Any like future projects to look out for, or like social sites or websites or anything?
I'm writing right now, but there's really nothing to plug yet. Just send me your good energy, because writing screenplays sucks. And now, but yeah, if you want to see any of my stuff, you can go to shalngo.com, just my name. But yeah, definitely check out Control Freak.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, I'll echo everything that Joe said. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody at home, for listening. Just a quick reminder to check out our Patreon if you want to be a patron or a Frankenstein. We've got Frankenstein. We've got 3 tiers: the $1, $3, and $7 tier. Any donation is much appreciated. We love all our patrons. We could stand to love them a little bit more and add more content, but we're working on it. We've got Franken bits for you if you wanted to hear us talk about things beyond the creature feature world. And yeah, it's just all money goes straight back into the production. We get better mics. We help with our subscription for our server, all the fun sausage making stuff that I don't need to bore you with, but it helps. So yeah, thank you again, Shal, for joining us. Thank you all at home or in your car or wherever you're listening to us from for checking us out. And until next time, creep it easy.